Right, we're going to look at rounding now. The interesting thing with rounding with decimals is what we're often trying to do is to create a meaningful number. So for example here, you've got 25.427 kilograms. So imagine that this might be, say, a vet weighing a dog, and they're wanting to find out the weight of the dog, and the scale tells them it's 25.427 kilograms. But think about that logically in terms of what really matters here. If you're trying to weigh a dog, it's probably because you're trying to establish the amount of food that you might have to give it, or it might be the type of bedding or kennel or medication, that sort of thing. So for that sort of thing, we're typically just after the larger portion of that particular measurement. This last 0.027 effectively is 27 grams. So in the scale of the size of a dog that's already 25 kilos, it's so insignificant we probably don't need it. So if we're rounding this off to a meaningful amount, we're certainly keeping the 25. So that's the large portion of it. And then we would probably just round it off to 0.4 kilos. So that's probably the measure that, say, a vet would write down in order to record the weight of the dog. And the reason you'd record the 0.4 is just an indication whether the weight was at the lower end of 25 or was the higher end of 25, in other words, closer to 26. Because then if they was perhaps going to measure the dog's weight again, maybe in a day or two, and they want to see whether there's been any fluctuation, well, the fluctuation here, say for example, of half a kilo, would get it closer to 26, but if you only wrote down 25 to start with, then that fluctuation isn't as noticeable. But a fluctuation here at the lower end is not going to make such a difference. So let's have a look at some other examples. Okay, so we're rounding off here, we've got 3.785. Just like when we're rounding off with whole numbers, what we can look at is two things. Firstly, how do we want to round it off? In this case, in brackets, it gives us a 2. This tells us they want us to round it off to 2 decimal places. So that means after the decimal point, there needs to be 2 decimal places, even if those decimal places are 0. So what we want to do is round this off. So we want to round it off to 2 decimal places. So that's through here. And then what we want to do is we want to look at the next number. In this case, it's a 5. So anything 5 and above, we want to round this number up. So the 8 becomes a 9. So this answer here would be 3.79 as that number being rounded off to 2 decimal places. Here we have one with 5 decimal places, and we're told we have to round it off to 3 decimal places. So the same process. So 3 decimal places after the decimal point, and we're looking again at the next number here. It's a 3, so it's less than 5. So we round it down, so it rounds back down to 8. So this becomes 0.958. I would have to say that most commonly you'll get asked to round off to 2 decimal places for most questions you get asked about. Or like the next one, it's rounding off to whole numbers. This one, it says to the nearest whole number. So you've got to think of that whole range of numbers that are here. So you've got 6.214. So what we're thinking here is this closer to 6 or is it closer to 7? And again, it's that same process. So we're rounding it off from here. So we look at the next number, it's a 2, so it's less than 5, so we're rounding back down. So the answer here would be 6 or 6.0. Okay, but there's no indication on this one that we have to put the decimal point or a place value for the decimal. So the 6 would be the best answer here, but I would say 6.0 would also be an acceptable answer in most instances. Right, let's look at rounding money, and this is slightly different to the other decimals that we look at. Because in Australia we round off using 5-cent increments, so once you go up to 5 cents it changes again. So what that really means is that from 0 through to 5 cents, and then from 5 cents through to 10 cents, the rounding changes. So here, anything from the 1 and 2 cents gets rounded down, and anything that is 3 or 4 cents gets rounded up. And the same here, anything that's 6 or 7 gets rounded down, and anything that's 8 or 9 gets rounded up. So it's slightly confusing in that there are a lot more elements to it. Let's have a look here at $8.53, and we can see here that it's the 3 is closer to the 5, so then it would get rounded up to $8.55. Here, $7.02 is going to get rounded down, so it's going to get rounded down to $7, like this, and $4.99 is going to get rounded up to $5, as such. So just keep in mind that when you see a dollar sign, that the rounding is slightly different when we're dealing with decimals in money.